Welcome into UGA Football Live with JC Shelton, where the dogs come to talk.
JC was saying, were you surprised by the start? And I think you can speak to this better than even I can, particularly playing a defensive guy playing in an environment like that. I think when you're up against a rival like that and Auburn in that type of environment, no matter what they're ranked or who may or may not be on the opposing team, and no matter how good or highly ranked that you are, you're always going to get their best shot, right?
Yeah, right.
And I think a perfect example where the roles were reversed is when you guys – I was redshirting that year, but when you guys went down to the Plains and played Cam Newton, and I think you could probably speak to that experience when we went up big. I think we went up like 21-3 in the first half, right?
Yeah.
And
it was something like that.
Yeah, so I think if you kind of talked about that, if you could talk about that experience and how that maybe is similar to what Auburn was doing with us, obviously similar to what Auburn did to what we did to Auburn this past weekend. We came back in the second half and won. But I just think talking about the significance of that rivalry and really records and rankings go out the window, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. I get what you're saying. And I look at it as when we played them in 2010, they did a lot of things to shoot themselves in the foot. And once they calmed down and started playing to their system, they started making plays and being themselves. And that's the same thing happened with Georgia. I feel like this weekend by watching the game, we shot ourselves in the foot by costly turnovers in our red zone. And those things turned into points. They was able to capitalize off those points. They capitalized on 14 points off turnovers. Like, take those 14 points away if we don't turn the ball over. Once we calm down and start playing our brand of ball and playing to our standard, we ran them off the field.
Yeah, so, no, exactly. Bacarri, my question for you off that, sorry to interrupt you, is, yeah, you're perfectly right about shooting in the foot. I feel like that's the only team that can beat Georgia in my mind. When you look at just college football as a whole, the top guys, what team do we see who's playing championship football right now? None. I mean, there's none, right? I think it's too early in the season.
Nobody is playing complete football, special teams, defense, and offense right now.
No.
And then nobody.
They do that, right? And that obviously
nobody in the
hurts
SEC.
And I think the closest is probably Georgia, to not being biased. Like, if you look at it stat-wise, Carson is playing pretty good football, and our defense is playing pretty well, besides the game against Auburn, we gave up those rushing yards. But, hey, I know this for a fact. Kirby got them Sunday or even Saturday, and him and Schumann and Muschamp, they figured out how to stop that because it's a copycat lead. They're going to see that again. Everybody go take their best shot, and everybody saw that Auburn was successful on those counters with the quarterback. So they're going to put it in their arsenal.
Yeah. No,
so
exactly
Georgia got to
right.
be prepared for it. They got to be prepared for it.
And just speaking off of that, Kirby in his press conference after, and when he's asked about what he thought about that run defense, he said that at first he thought it was really bad. After watching the tape, he didn't think it was as bad because he didn't think that Georgia just got beat with it or more out physical. He said that they didn't line up to what they were shown as well as they should have. So that's kind of a perfect situation right there where I think that it was good at Georgia to see this. Now, Kentucky coming up and O'Leary, he's not a run threat like we saw Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford last week. They're not like that, but can we see it down the road with a running quarterback? You know, really that goes into that game that Arthur was mentioning was Cam Newton and you facing him on the Plains and a running quarterback. And that's one of the things I was going to ask you, Bacarri, is describe the challenges of a running quarterback like that in an offense predicated really on that, getting first downs, right? Extending long drives, eating up the clock, which is everything that we saw against Auburn on Saturday.
It's difficult because it eats up the clock and moves the chain, but it turns the running back from a ball carrier to a blocker, so it's an extra man. It's very difficult. It also can extend plays. Now you got where quarterbacks look like they're running the ball, and a slot corner might come upon them to tackle them. He might dish it out to the slot receiver like a triple option. So it's so difficult, man, and it's It's just difficult. It's hard. It's kind of hard to slow it down right now, especially if you got a quarterback that can read it. And a perfect example of one of those guys was Nick Marshall. He was like the perfect guy for that system because he had a cannon. He had a cannon. He could run. He could read it. Like he was the perfect quarterback for that system.
Yeah, and you think about who's going to come out of the West right now. I think it's Alabama. I think they're hitting their stride a bit. They have a fire underneath them. Jalen Milroe was benched. That game comes back. I think he looks like a better player to me. And they have that threat with him. So that's something if Georgia makes it, Alabama makes it, SEC championship, Georgia might see some run looks like they saw this past week against Auburn. And Alabama. Yeah.
I think
Alabama has to play Auburn.
I think they're going to see it before then. I think they're going to see it against Tennessee.
Very well could be.
You think they'll use Milton as a running quarterback a little
Man,
more?
it really depends on his knee. He does have a knee injury. Josh Heupel won't talk about it. 2 weeks ago, after his 81-yard touchdown run on the first play of the game, he didn't run one more time. Came out of the game with a knee. He was seen at the Tennessee hospital the next day. Heupel was asked about that. He didn't give any details. Said Milton was good to go. So I'm not sure.
Milton's a big dude now. That's a big man.
He's fast now.
When Georgia travel to Knoxville?
November 11th.
Not till November.
You got a whole month, and that's Georgia coming there. Like I'm pretty sure that he's gonna play. He's definitely gonna play.
He's going to play, right? But will they run him like that? It's November 18th, my bad. November 18th. But, you're right, Bacarri. Plenty of time for him to get healthy, obviously.
Yeah, I think so. I think even before then, they're going to see it. I mean, it's going to be a way. Offensive coordinators are smart enough to figure out a way to get it some kind of way packaged in for that to happen.
Yeah.
So, Georgia, I know Georgia going to be prepared for it, though.
Yeah,
Rambo, I'm interested to hear like your thought because like last week we talked a lot about going into hostile environments in the SEC, right? And particularly, you obviously played at a high level in the NFL. Was a playmaker in the NFL for the Bills Mafia is probably a little bit different. That's probably a little bit like a college atmosphere, but I think it's hard for some people to really understand how at a place like the SEC, in the SEC, there's just talent on every single team, right? There's NFL bodies, NFL players. And so I always try to tell people, it's like, man, just because we're playing South Carolina might not be good, doesn't mean they don't have playmakers that are going to go play 10 years in the league. And when if you could speak to that, just like any type, like, for instance, we're playing Kentucky. Kentucky's obviously pretty good this year. But, I mean, I remember my freshman year, your redshirt freshman year, we played Kentucky. Kentucky beat us I think they beat us at home like 28-21 or something.
Yeah, I was I remember that game.
Yeah, but just kind of speak like I think they had Randall Cobb on that team. Like, and you're thinking like, who's Randall Cobb? Randall Cobb played 15 years in the league. You know what I mean? And that's when Kentucky wasn't even good. So if you could speak to that, just like the level of talent and then how hard it is to play on the road in the SEC.
Man, the talent is crazy, man. It's so many like hidden talent in the SEC, or just like all around the country. But just from what I experienced in the SEC, it was talent like crazy. And then you like, I just remember hearing guys' names, and I just like look them up, just like, man, I played against him. Like, 100%. He's pretty good. Like, dang, I didn't even know who he was. Like, matter of fact, Josh Norman, we played against him. I think it was Coastal Carolina.
Oh, that's right. In 2011.
Yeah. Yep. And so we didn't even know that. Like, things like that. But he wasn't even in our conference, though. But it just, talent is everywhere. But playing in hostile environments, man, it's crazy. I remember playing, the loudest game I ever played in was in 2009. We was playing Tennessee. And that's when Lane Kiffin was there and Eric Berry. Yep. And man, that stadium was so loud, it looked like it was rocking.
And remember when Eric Berry had he had that pick six.
Yes.
When he had, so that pick six that he had, Rambo, reminded me of your pick six against Auburn. So
Wow.
last week I was talking about I was just BSing on Twitter, and someone was talking about loudest stadiums, whatever, and I was like, these are my top 5 loudest moments in Sanford, and yours to me have that time you got that pick six 2011 against Auburn. It was in the east end zone or south end zone, and you kind of went over the top almost at the very end.
Yeah.
That was the loudest I'd ever heard Sanford Stadium. But you bring up that Tennessee game with Eric Berry, same exact environment.
Man, that thing was loud.
Loud. Joe Cox got his depleted.
Joe was not Joe. Y'all leave Joe out of this, bro. He didn't do anything to deserve this.
They painted Joe that night, man. They brought that pain to Joe that night, man.
Hey, Joe Cox, Alabama. Joe Cox, he worked his way up.
South Carolina was pretty loud too in 2012 when we played them there. When they beat the crap out of us.
Oh yeah.
It was loud there.
Yeah, I that game, you had an unbelievable play. You were it was like watching Andrew Jones. I think that's a Braves player for you guys. A little throwback, right? A center fielder.
He's only retired his number this year, but yeah, he's a Braves player.
I called it, and the dude was falling down and snatched it out my hands. Bro, you know what? Once that happened, I never wore those white gloves again. I threw them gloves away. I said, I'll never wear these gloves again.
That game, that would have changed the dynamic of that game. But
man,
another perfect example, right? You just think about momentum shifts and when you're on the road because if you go back to that 2011 Auburn game, we couldn't really move the ball, right? We were not throwing the ball that well. Our defense had really been outplaying the offense in that part of the year, particularly in that part of the season. And then Rambo gets this pick six. It gives us some juice. The stadium's going nuts. Concrete's falling off the stadium. And next thing you know, Coach Bubba was like, we're not throwing the ball one more time the second half. We're going 2 tights and a fullback, and we're running the ball with Isaiah. And we ended up running for 200 yards in the second half or something like that. And we beat him by 20-something points.
Him and Carlton Thomas.
Yep. CT. There's some throwback names for you. Yeah.
Yeah, man. They was, man. Isaiah, man, he was running, man. I love the way Isaiah used to run that ball, man.
Yeah. What could have been
different. He was different, man. Just imagine having him and Todd Gurley in the backfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Keith Marshall.
Yeah.
Man, you talking about that's deadly.
Yeah, SEC Freshman of the Year. And then what could have been.
That's deadly,
you know what?
Man.
He was a good dude, man. I loved Isaiah, right? He was a good guy. Got caught up a little bit, but when I say that, you just talk to him, sit down, you talk to him man to man. Awesome guy, man.
I don't have nothing bad to say about Isaiah. Yeah, he was a cool dude. Yeah, he just
what a talent.
Yeah. I mean, he was successful. He was successful with the Browns.
Yeah,
no doubt.
He was carrying that thing with the Browns too, man.
Carl, I want to ask you this question too about going back to that run situation, what we faced against Auburn, and going into a team, Kentucky, who had 280 just from Ray Davis versus Florida. Obviously it's not a great setup for Georgia coming off that game versus Auburn with that rush defense playing like this. And as a guy who coached, on Kirby Smart's staff, what do you think that schematically he's talking to these guys about, him and Glenn Schumann and the linebackers, defensive line, all that, the front seven right there, and trying to stop this run and be physical with a team that, they run the ball. That's what they need. Leary, he can stand back there and pass when he needs to, but he's not as efficient. What do you think Kirby Smart's telling these guys this week?
You said one word in that whole little statement. The one word that he's going to say is physical. We got to be physical. We going to be physical. We going to play our standard. It's not like he's not really worried about what Kentucky is doing. He worried about what they're doing. So I just really feel like He gonna have him being physical, and he's gonna put him in a position. Once you be physical, I'm gonna put you in position to make plays.
Yeah.
So I don't think the run attack against Kentucky, the Kentucky run attack is gonna be productive against Georgia.
Yeah.
The only way they're gonna have to get it on the outside, but running in them tackles, it ain't it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, that edge wasn't as great, but I think you take the QB run out of that. I think, like you said, I'm not seeing Kentucky do quite what they did. And even look back at Davis's stats from the rest of the games. I mean, he was averaging about 70 yards going into that game. So I think it speaks more about Florida than Kentucky in that game. Florida's been out physical this year anyway.
I think they're gonna give them like little dump passes to the outside, let them get out in space, put them on a one-on-one tackle with a DB, see if we can tackle. I think
Yeah.
that's just different ways to get him the ball. And once he gets the ball, he's very effective. So they don't always have to be in between tackles. Once they see, like they know that if they don't know, they'll figure out that hey, we can't run in between tackles, but we got a good player. We need to get him out of space. They're gonna
Yeah.
start doing little touch passes to the outside, or they might just do some like RPOs or something, trying to get those linebackers to not bite up on the run as much.
Yeah. And I think they have to. I mean, if you're thinking about Kentucky, you have to establish that run game because Georgia in that secondary is playing like the best in the country beyond, being third in the country in interceptions and the game sealer from Malachi last week. They've had a couple of times this year where they've sealed the game with picks when teams have to throw to win. I mean,
Yeah,
you can't get that run established, and you're going to let Georgia really play up on you. And we've seen this even from a tackling standpoint, like I said, from the DB group. And Kamari Lassiter has been so physical in tackles this year. Tyke
yeah,
Smith, Malachi Stark speaks for himself. You get it out in space with these guys, you're flirting with fire to me. I think those guys cause turnovers like that, and they really take the receivers out of this game. So I think Georgia defense plays the best that we've seen this week. I really do.
yeah. I think the matchup isn't well for Kentucky. I don't think it's well at all.
Yeah. And defensively for Kentucky, they do have a good secondary as well. They've played well. And they really, that was a large part of why they beat Florida like they did. They challenged the heck out of those guys to pass the
But
ball.
Florida don't have really good receivers like that, though, in my opinion. No
Mhm.
disrespect. Like they don't really have no one that's, you know, can beat one-on-one coverage.
Yeah. So who are they gonna? How are they gonna stop Brock Bowers and then Lad McConkey? Let's get into this a little bit, Artie too as well. Let's talk Carson Beck in this game as well because he's not perfect in this game. Missed a possible touchdown to Oscar Delp right down the seam. Interception followed that throw, but clutch is really the key for me out of this game. 6 for 6 on third downs in the second half, 8 of 10 overall. I mean, you think about, and we talked about at length about playing on the road in the SEC at Jordan Hare and him coming in. And Artie and I talked about this last week, the crowd noise, the pressure, having to do silent reads and stuff because you can't hear a snap, you can't hear a word anybody's saying. And he goes out and he plays like that in clutch situations and didn't really blink. I watched the tape back as well. Didn't blink in those situations. I mean, knew where he was going with the ball based off the coverage, made the throw. A couple of times he got blitzed right in his face. Georgia didn't even touch the guy, and he threw right at that blitz for 10, 12
Mm.
yards. That was impressive to me. And he ended up with 23, 33, 318 yards, touchdown. He's second in the SEC in passing yards right now. I think if you're a Georgia fan, you don't like Carson Beck, I don't know what games you're watching right now.
Yeah, I think really, and again, this is it's the reason why I love Georgia fans and the reason why they make me laugh at the same time. It's like you gotta think like for 2 years there was naysayers about Stetson after he won a national championship.
Yeah.
And then like he goes and does it again, and there's still probably people who are like, well, maybe we could have been undefeated 2 years in a row or something like that. Like I think when it comes to the quarterback position, it's just so incredibly difficult to play it and play it well at a high level. And we talked about it a little bit last week. This guy, Carson Beck, like he's been a backup for 3 years, right? That's a long time not to be the guy. It's like it's going to take him some time to become, A, find his own identity, and then B, earn the trust of his teammates, right? There's a certain level of trust you earn in practice, and I think Rambo can speak to this too, because defensive guys, like, it takes them a lot for them to start trusting their own quarterback, because it's just like that's just the nature of it, right? And it's going to take him some wins like the one he had in Auburn for the team to really be like, oh, this is our guy. And I think you saw that trust get earned from Stetson. Oh, by the end of year one with him, where the guys were like, no, this is our dude, right? He's coming here and he's balled out. He's earned it. And I think, and not just the offensive guys, but the defensive guys, and sometimes earning the trust of your defensive teammates as a quarterback is more important than earning the trust of your offensive guys, because if Mike Bobo wants to go for it on 4th and 4, and he trusts his quarterback, and the defense can come up to Kirby Smart and say, go for it, we trust him, but if he doesn't get it, we got your back. You know what I mean? And I think that type of bond, if you will, or trust is really earned in the games like they had on Saturday. So obviously not a perfect game. I've never met a quarterback to have a perfect QBR through an entire season. I'm sure whoever becomes that first quarterback will be whatever. But Caleb Williams almost threw the game away for USC, and he threw 7 touchdowns against Buffalo or Colorado the other day. So I think for Carson Beck, it was a huge opportunity for him to go out and earn the trust of his teammates, and he did just that. But I don't know what you saw, Rambo. I mean, obviously, we could speak as much as we want about Brock Bowers. I think it's understood what kind of dude that is. He's a killer, right? He's like the AJ Greens. He's like the Julio Jones. He's like the Todd Gurley. He's the gamer. He's a killer. But I think, I was always fascinated with like the trust dynamic of like defensive players and their offensive players. So I don't know if Rambo, if you want to take that and talk about that trust that defensive guys may or may not have in their offensive teammates. Because I know you've probably been on teams where you don't trust the quarterback, and you and your guys probably won't say it out loud, but are probably like, man, we're going to have to pick up the slack here for the offense, right?
I mean, I feel like it was more of just the trust of, I knew Artie was going to do his job. I knew Aaron was going to do his job. I knew Jarvis was going to do his job. I knew David Andrews and Todd and TKs and Malcolms and Marlins and whoever. I knew everybody was going to do their job. I trusted y'all was going to do your job. So if Murray knew he was going to have a bad day, if Murray was having a bad day, he trusted that we was going to do our job to shut down on third and have a good third down, or to get turnovers, to win in the turnover margin, to get him a scoring defense, And I just think it's more just trusting us to do our job. Like, that's basically what it is. I think, too, was with Grantham, man. When Grantham came, Grantham changed our whole attitude. Because I know some offense, it might have been you as one of the offensive players that used to come over there and listen to Grantham talk during pregame.
Oh, yeah.
Bro, Grantham used to get out there, man.
So, like, you got to put some context in there. And, like, I say this with a heart full of love. I love Coach Rick no matter what. But, man, he's a God-fearing individual, right? He does not cuss. He's like – and I'm like this kid from the North. I'm like, I need to be mother effed to, like, get me going. You know what I mean? And Grantham comes in. I think Bobo was just, like, very, like, young offensive coordinator from Georgia, kind of probably looked up to Coach Rick a little bit. It's like Coach Bobo is very much like Coach Smart. Like, he likes to mother F people, you know what I mean? Yeah. Grantham comes in, gets the big contract, and like kind of can do like he's like lighting the fire under Rambo's ass. He's lighting the fire under Jarvis's ass. He's lighting the fire under Cornelius' ass. And he's dropping bombs to everybody. And so I would just be like, I'd come over there and just sit in the back and listen to this guy go off. And I'm like, I need to have what he's having tonight.
Wait, was he cussing out the other team, or was he cussing out y'all?
Everybody. Nobody was saying.
Everybody. He cussing at, I don't know who he's cussing at. He's breaking like overhead projectors and stuff. Like
everything.
Like, bro, I remember one game. we had got a 3 and out. We run into the sideline, and he went to the ball boy for our opponents, and he was like, "Yeah, run that MF again." And the ball boy is like, "Bro, I ain't even like, I don't got nothing to do with the coaching staff." And he was like cussing at the ball boy on our side. That's when I knew I was like, Grantham is like, he one of the boys, man. I like Grantham.
I used to go up to Grantham in the middle of the game, like if the defense let up like if the defense let up a first down or something, I just go up to Grantham. I'm like, Grantham, are we just not tackling anybody today? Just to fire him up, you know what I mean? Because like I knew that at some point in the game he was breaking a clip or whiteboard, or he was. I mean, and he would like get in it with Coach Rick. He'd get in it with like the position coaches, and the best was in practice. I was on scout team my redshirt year, and if like I caught a pass or Michael Bennett caught a pass or like whatever, like he would just sit there and just tear into like all these future NFL Pro Bowlers, right? Whether it be Rambo, whether it be Houston, Justin Houston, Jarvis, I mean, you name it. And you're just like, this guy does not give a flying you know what. And the thing I love the most about it is when he came in, it heightened Bobo's level of like passion and competition. So they would just, MF each other. And
they'll go at each other.
I think it honestly just kind of like, it raised the level of competition, which is why I do love Kirby Smart. Like just kind of watching his like speak, because like you could tell they got fires in their bellies, man, and that's how it's supposed to be played.
That's my point to go off of what you just said, because think about, all right, so you had Todd Grantham, you guys had Todd Grantham as your guy, right? And now you have Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp.
Yeah, Muschamp's out of his mind.
How many, dude, that boy, y'all remember those CBS network clips of him on the sideline as a Florida Gator, just red, cussing people out. You have them two on defense, and you got Mike Bobo on offense. Like,
man, when we get done this podcast, I know somebody got some videos of Muschamp on the sideline. I'm gonna go check them out, because boy, those things are so funny, man.
Yeah.
Because the only thing be moving is like his little hair right here and his little cheeks. He just be, woo.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would have been able to. I would have took it pretty well, because I felt like I was coachable. And my dad was like that as a coach on me. Like, it was times in high school where I had to apologize to my dad after the game because me and him cussed each other out. And I wanted to go borrow his truck, so I had to go apologize. But
you go kiss the ring.
Yeah, man. But some kids, if you aren't made for that, if you ain't come from that, I don't see how you'll be able to take it.
No, there's one.
They bring it at practice.
Yeah, there's one defensive tackle who now plays for USC that I don't think could take it, and that's from,
he said they promised him something, they lied to him or something like that. Man, one thing about Kirby, you gonna have to earn your spot each and every day.
I think it's a great time to hit some Georgia Kentucky predictions right now, and we'll get into some history class with Artie Lynch a bit later. Bacarri, I want to give you opportunity to get your predictions in if you got to jump out, I understand.
All right, let me see.
Yeah, a score prediction. I'll tell you right now, the line is 14.5, Georgia. Let me get the over under. Yeah, 14.5 still. It moved from 17, right? 48.5 is the total.
48 is the total?
48.5.
I'm looking up these games real quick.
I want to say under. I think Georgia 31-17.
31-17.
That's 14 points. That's 48. Like, but
I like it.
I also want to say, like, man, just knowing this gambling crap, man, these spreads. Sometimes you sit down and watch them games and you think, man, them jokers know something, bro.
Oh, yeah.
They know something. Like, how in the world?
Yeah, Sean McVay kicked a field goal for no reason the other day when time was running out. So Yeah, the other team covered, and then Patty Mahomes just this past week slid down
Just
when he could have
yeah,
scored.
exactly. Like they know something. But I don't want to disrespect Georgia and say 17. I don't think Kentucky has scored 17 points. So I'm gonna say 31-9. I get on 3 field goals.
31-9. Hey, that's a good one.
31-9.
I like it. We hadn't heard that one on here. A 9. I like it. Field goals
31-9.
keeps him out of the end
Yeah.
zone. I think Georgia's defense plays well. Not gonna lie, I'm with you.
Yeah, I think
Bakari.
we match up pretty well. I think we're gonna match up pretty well.
Yeah,
They might get a big play. They're gonna make a big play, but then Georgia's gonna calm down and we're gonna be able to adjust and go make things happen. So it's gonna be 31-9 or 31-10. If they capitalize off this big play they make, then it's gonna be 10. But if they don't, they kick a field goal, it's gonna be 9.
I like it. Lock it
Watch,
in.
watch,
Lock it in.
watch
Bacarri
this.
Rambo. He calls
Watch
stuff on the
this.
show now. He calls stuff on the
Watch
show.
this.
Artie, before you get into yours, I want to say one thing about this game too. Doesn't it feel like this matchup is the same each year? It's like we hear about Kentucky's O-line, the ground game, the defense is physical, their physical brand of football. And then Georgia controls the game. They win by a couple of scores at worst. You know, Georgia won 16-6 last year in a really cold game. It was like 14 degrees, 30-13 the year prior. You know, Kentucky was about at this level. I think they're a little bit better this year, just from how they've played teams. But it's kind of the same story each year. But you know, they always want to mention the media, especially. You know, this team is built kind of like a Georgia. You know, they're built on that brand of football. But Georgia has the upper hand each year. I think it's going to remain the same this year. Go ahead, Artie.
Part of me thinks that Georgia's about to roll. I mean, I know I've been saying that the past couple of weeks, and that like we really haven't had our coming out party. But for whatever reason, I mean, for many reasons, I should say, not whatever reason, but I think Kirby just kind of has Kentucky's number a little bit. You know, Kentucky's have put together some really good teams in the past couple of years, but every time they meet Georgia, they seem to meet their match a little bit. Obviously, it's not every year for the past 20, but it just kind of seems like that's the way this thing goes. I think it's going to be like a 28-3 game. I think it'll probably be like 14-3 in the first half, and then we probably pull away in the second half. But I don't think they score that much. Their offense has not, the past couple of years, has not been able to move the ball as well as they probably would have liked against our defenses. I think that remains consistent this year. But yeah, so give me like 28-3.
28-3. Lock it in as well, Artie. Artie's been pretty good with those as well. You know, I like kind of in the same score bracket as you guys. We'll go 30. We'll go 30-13. A little bit more points than Bacarri there. Yeah, probably the reasons I've already said. I think Georgia rolls as well here, especially the defense just plays out. That secondary is just too much. It's too much once you get down to really come back. And with Carson's playing the way he's playing, you have to do so much on offense, I think, to keep him off the field. I don't think that happens. Bacarri, I really appreciate you jumping on, man.
The key for Kentucky, they got to start a third and long because Georgia's got too many athletes. And third down, third and long, man, that's their chance to put those boys that they don't have much to think about. They don't have like 4 or 5 plays. Like, you know, these 4 or 5 plays, and you go get these plays probably 8 times a game. You go get in there and you go. There's just too many athletes to sit there and try to play with Georgia head on. So Kentucky, I just think don't get in third and long. That's when Georgia go put their best players on the field and they go get after it.
But Georgia has to get it done between the hedges on Saturday, 7:00 kick. I'll be on ESPN. It's going to be a great game, folks. I appreciate you guys jumping on. Artie, as always, Bacarri, thanks for joining us, man. We really enjoyed you having us, you jumping on and describing you're the great Arthur Lynch, the barber. And one thing else I say about Bacarri before we leave here is he's still the only player to ever intercept Aaron Rodgers twice in one game. So props to you there, Bacarri.
Oh man, thanks. I think somebody else might have done that this past year. Yeah, man, it sucks, but
One
hey,
of two,
records are
baby.
made to be broken.
Hey, Rambo, man! I just want to say I love you, brother. It's so good to see.
All right,
So good seeing you virtually. I hope I see you in person soon. But
all
I
right,
love
love
you,
you more,
man.
man. Hey, if you ever down here in South Florida, man, you need to work on your tan or something, man. Holler at me. I'm down here in South Florida.
Well,
Take you out there on the
well,
golf course.
well, if you can't tell, I can always work on my tan. You know what I mean?
Hey,
I'm a little pale, but I just want
oh,
you to know, man. I love you to death, brother. It's so good
I
seeing
love
you.
you. I love you too, bro. You know how to find me, man. Let's link up.